Hello, welcome to the Open Circle. Glad you could be together like this. Today's discussion, I thought we can talk about an important differentiation, and it's come up in the court transcripts, court systems. It's not something we didn't know could happen, but it keeps happening again and again and again. And we need to get on top of it, and I'll tell you why. So what's the theme? Let's see if it can clarify with the right theme. So I've got my glasses on, got my notes on the ready. Here it is. Shunning, accountability, and the difference between discipline and retaliation. So we're going to discuss a difficult but extremely important subject, and this is what courts have not made a provision for. They've tackled cases, but it is not their job to necessarily make a provision for this particular problem. Now, I'm thinking of media. I'm thinking of a story like Count of Monte Cristo. Count of Monte Cristo, you might be familiar with that. Count of Monte Cristo, it's a story of an injustice. Why? Because it challenged leadership. It challenged a flaw in the leadership, and the leadership realized, we've got to hide our tracks in the name of, keeping governance, keeping leadership. And so an innocent person is sent to a prison, and that's the story. The person gets out of the prison. They are an innocent, and of course they rebuild their life. It's a really interesting story. So it's something like that. So the difference between legitimate religious discipline and what can become weaponized social exclusion. You might see on my channel I've got a t-shirt against weaponized retaliatory shunning. Because of course the argument has been that shunning has its place. Again, let's be very, very clear. This isn't an attack on faith. It's not an attack on sincere believers. We see that the way that society is, we have freedom of religion. Persons have freedom to believe what they want. They have freedom to belong to an institute, even a non-religious institute. This is how the planet and society is made up. It's made up of persons that belong to these, if you want to say, different clubs or different institutes. So it's not an attack on sincere believers. And it's not an argument that religious communities should have no standards. Okay? Because almost every human group has standards. You think about a family. Family has standards. Rules of the house. Wipe your feet when you come to the door, for instance, or make sure that if you use water in the kitchen that you close the tap when you are finished. Don't leave the water running. That would be a waste. So that's a family rule, a couple of simple rules. Schools have rules. When the bell rings, don't go to the next class. Sports teams have rules. They have rules of engagement for how they play the game. They have codes of conduct, etiquette. We hope that they do, but that's how a sports team is structured. Governments have rules. If you use this computer, make sure that you don't bring a USB drive and copy information and take it out of the government facility. That would be a breach of confidentiality. That's a rule. Okay, got it. Okay, so there's a computer department. They monitor that to make sure. That's a rule. Religions have rules. They might say smoking, cigarette, that's a rule. Don't smoke cigarettes. That's the rule. If you smoke the cigarette, then yes, we may help you. But if it's a repeated pattern, we're going to determine that there is, the consequences for breaking that rule. You've agreed to that. Okay. So the question is not whether standards exist. We've seen that in courts. Courts see, oh yes, those are the standards. All right, that's what happens if you break the standards. All right, if now you're in the family and you've left the tap running, and we see that that's a repeated problem, we might say to you, no, you can't go into the kitchen anymore. You're becoming a liability to the house. Why? Because when there's running water, the costs go up. It's a waste of water and it's a waste of money. So we have now determined that until you build up trust, you cannot enter into the kitchen. When you've built trust again, then maybe we can put you on a trial and see if you can be trusted to turn off the tap when you're supposed to. That's a rule. That's the consequences. And that's how the system maintains some sort of order. So, what happens? And this is the question I've got to frame. What happens when a disciplinary system endorsed by courts, endorsed by the supreme courts in a society, which is, you could say, the best system we've got? Okay, you could say that. Right? What happens when a disciplinary system is used not merely to correct behavior, but to silence scrutiny? I'm going to repeat it. What happens when a disciplinary system is used not merely to correct behavior? Let's say the smoking situation, let's say the family situation with the tap and the water, but to silence scrutiny. This distinction matters ethically. I've said this before. I say courts, if persons who are seeking justice are coming into a court system to try and seek justice, the chances are they are going to lose because this distinction is not being made clear enough, and the capture of the problem is not being made clear enough. It hasn't reached that threshold to capture where things go wrong. And we'll tell you why, because there's this catch-22 situation. We're going to get into it because this distinction matters ethically, psychologically, socially, and legally. So many courts throughout the democratic world have upheld the principle that religious groups possess freedom of association. Now, what does that mean? I think we've got it. If we're on this channel, we go, yeah, we know what you mean. It means that if a person voluntarily joins a religious community, though we'll argue you can be born into it, and that's all you've ever known, and therefore you're in a captive situation. But let's just say, if a person joins a religious community with known expectations, like the smoking thing, just as an example, right? And it's got moral standards. It says, no, you need to, if you want to marry somebody, you want to have coital relations with them. Okay, you want to have sexual connection with that person. All right, you have to go through the marital system. It's got to match biblical rules. Monogamous relations there between female, male. It's got to meet those expectations, and then you've got to use a court system and the civil system. You've got to use that for it to be recognized as honorable. Okay. There's a couple of examples. Smoking, that's that one. No theft in business. You've got to be honest. You've got to pay your taxes. You've got to say yes means yes, no means no. Don't be deceptive. Don't get all legalistic and try and trap people. All right. Okay. So those are some of the expectations. So when a person joins a religious community, with the known expectations, they study for 6 months or a year or whatever it is, and they see, oh, these are all the standards. the community generally has some right to enforce those standards internally. Enter the shunning arrangement, enter the tribunal arrangement, which is in Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, that's not unusual historically. It's not unusual for the local golf club or the government facility or the school facility or whatever. But there's another side to this discussion that's often misunderstood. Now, we've seen this happen in the court transcripts. We've seen it happen in the various court cases. And you could say, well, nothing's changing. No, something's changing, because we are seeing this clearly now. We are seeing what has been tackled, all the ways that have been tackled, and suddenly persons are listening to this distinction, whereas it was, no, we're going to go this route. And this other distinction has not really been the focus. It's been very, very difficult to try and lock down. Right? And here it is. The same mechanism that can preserve community standards that says no smoking allowed. Let's just do that with all due respect to the smokers out there. But in Jehovah's Witnesses, in that system, they'll say no smoking. You can say yes, in the past they allowed it, but in modern recent times, no smoking is allowed. If we see you habitually smoking, it's going to trigger the tribunal. It's going to trigger the shunning arrangement. Okay. So the same mechanism that can preserve community standards, no smoking, can also, under certain conditions, become a mechanism of coercion. Negative coercion. Negative fear. And negative institutional self-protection. And this is where we need nuance rather than slogans. Why? Because one of the most respected scholars in the study of coercive systems was Robert J. Lifton. Now, Lifton studied ideological systems, ideological control, psychological pressure, and systems that discourage independent thought. Now, he explained how environments can emerge where social belonging becomes tied to conformity. Remember the smoking illustration? Not merely moral behavior, but conformity itself. And so once survival inside the social structure depends on agreement, dissent becomes psychologically dangerous. Not because the dissenter is necessarily wrong. We saw that in Norway. We had 2 judges out of 5 that dissented in a Supreme Court system. These are dissenters. These 2, right? And you could say the third one, which way was it going? But these 2 dissented in that legal system. So not that the dissenters were wrong, but because exclusion carries overwhelming consequences. Those 2 dissenters, they go home, they carry on as judges, right, in that system. Now let's use a simple illustration, because those 2 judges in, say, for instance, a JW system, you hear, the majority of the elders, they all decided to agree. It was unanimous agreement. Very seldom you hear it was a 2 against 3, and this third one was potentially swinging either which way. Why? Because it's a closed door system. So let's try and use a simple illustration. So imagine a town with only one bridge there we go. Maybe it's a river, and there's the bridge, one side of the bank to the other. And everybody uses that bridge for work, for family, for friendship. People travel over each way. They use that bridge even for marriage. It's sides, it's a wide bridge for community life. Sometimes you've got buyers, sellers there, so you've got traffic going over. There's a community that's using this bridge. Now, imagine the authorities come along and they say, if you break agreed rules, you may lose bridge access. But now imagine something else happens. Okay, suppose a respected bridge inspector reports corruption among the bridge authorities themselves. Okay. And instead of investigating the report, the authorities revoke the inspector's bridge access. Suddenly the issue is no longer discipline. The issue becomes, was the system used to protect truth or protect power? So this concern appears repeatedly in academic research on high control environments. And of course, somebody has come in onto the channel and said, no, you need to differentiate. High control, that's not always a bad thing. What do you mean? They say, well, negative high control environments. Now, we often quote Stephen Hassan because he's done a lot of work and he's known for his work on undue influence and authoritarian systems. He's got into trouble himself. He talks about it, right? Agree or disagree with him, but he's done a lot of work, right? And it's got a lot of valid points. And he explains that isolation and fear of social loss can become powerful behavioral controls, like the bridge story. Now, let's also enter this complexity. It's not always intentional, right? Sometimes systems evolve this way gradually. You say it's human nature, but the effect is still profound, right? Because when people observe, oh, social exile, we went to Matt Gray as an elder, Matthew Gray. We wanted justice, we wanted help, and then we saw that when he tried to process the same things that we were experiencing as an injustice, he was eliminated from the system. So it tells us something. If a respected elder can't get through with the evidence, which gets spoken of as non-evidence because nobody wants to look at it, because there's libel or slander that's used as a defense mechanism. So don't listen to Matt, he's a liar. Don't listen to him. He's a practicing Satanist. He's a devil worshipper. He does all kinds of things that are really, really bad. Okay? So don't listen to him. He's an apostate. He's an apostate elder. He might be an elder, but he's an apostate elder. I'm telling you, he's on the watch list. When people observe that, despite that man, Matthew Gray's record of service in the most hostile of situations, where he's so transparent, even about his most intimate thoughts, his dreams, he says, oh, what would be embarrassing? I had an erotic dream. Now, were you outside of the marital arrangement? No, I had a dream. Matt, calm down. That's not a crime. That's not something against the religion. Well, in Bethel they say that if you clutch your pillow too hard during the night, this is unclean. I had this dream. Okay, Matt, thanks for coming forward. Just kind of calm down. You've gone too far with this. And by the way, not every elder is equipped to deal with this. They are going to say that this is wrong. Just pull back, please, because our community can't handle this kind of honesty. So despite that track record of brutal honesty, of absolute candidness, of working through life, going, I'm transparent about everything, but not just transparent, I am accountable. If I need to make a change, I make a change. If I had a smoking problem, I don't buy cigarettes. I refuse to, and I won't go around people who smoke cigarettes, because I saw in the religion it's wrong. I am taking steps. I'm not just going to say no, it's wrong. I am taking steps through many years, decades, faithful service to build up a good reputation. If people see that person with a good reputation destroyed by the system, do you think evidence is going to come forward? Because the courts say we don't see the evidence. Because the evidence, I am going to say, is suppressed. When Matthew Gray saw something that broke the law, he stood on his own. But in my case, I'll tell you exactly what happened. Others did see. I only took action when I went, oh, this is clear. You saw that? Yes. You saw that? Yes. What do you advise? Because I can tell you, if you want me to just go with this, I know exactly what the procedure is. Yeah, Matt, this is the procedure. I said, well, I align with that procedure. Yeah, great. Let's put it in writing. Do we all agree? Yes. Okay, let's deal with this. No, we don't know what happened. Just now we agreed. No. I'm erasing it, because people have observed the social exile. They get afraid. They see the reputational collapse. Matt, you're on your own. We're gonna essentially sacrifice you like Christ, or we're gonna sacrifice you like the prophets. When they see the family rupture, they go, we're going to put up with it. Yeah, we saw it, but don't put us on the record. We saw the alleged crime, don't put us on the record. Yeah, but we got the writing. No, if we can erase it, we'll erase it. Please don't put us in this situation. Can't afford it. Matt, we just can't afford it. And I've seen this time and time again. I've seen this where there is family violence. Police are called, and the police say to the person who's called for help, they say, are you pressing charges? And I've seen this happen. And the person who's called in the police for safety says, no, I'm not pressing charges. And it could be because of codependency, interdependency, there's many factors here. But usually it's because of social exile that they have witnessed, or reputational collapse, or family rupture, or loss of community standing. And so they learn silently. And I hear police saying, are you under threat? And the person says, no. I say, but what about before? The police are not going to ask that. They're just going to say, are you under threat right now? No, I'm not, because I'm talking to you. Yeah, but when the police go, are you under threat? Yes. Well, why didn't you say this? So this is how the complexity comes in, because they can say, well, there's no direct threat now. Humans are social creatures. Matt Gray, as strange as he is, he's a social creature, just like you or many that are here in the channel. So the fear of isolation, I want to change that. I'm going to say the need to be with people. Okay, but the fear of isolation is one of the deepest fears we possess, because we say, look, I can't go and work the farm on my own. I just don't have the power for this. Maybe my best years have gone. Maybe my health has deteriorated. I can't get out there anymore. I should have children that would be helping me, or I should have friends that are helping me. So it's this system that we have where each has their place in the system, and we go, no, fear of isolation can mean loss of survival. So it is one of the most deepest fears, and you can say legitimate fears, that we possess. Okay. So this becomes especially serious when whistleblowing enters the picture. So let's define whistleblowing carefully. So a whistleblower is not merely someone who complains. A whistleblower is someone alleging wrongdoing inside a system. Okay? Often at personal cost. So Matt, who's been plugging corporal punishment, he sees a situation that we've got to say is alleged. He sees, man, this is happening at a Kingdom Hall. This is happening on the shepherding cause, the ministry that they're involved in, the pastoral care that he's involved. He sees people involved in corporal punishment in a jurisdiction, a region where it's illegal. And he sees, no, we've got a culture of leaders in the congregation who are encouraging it. Oh, that's how we grew up. We all grew up with that. It's necessary. It's what God teaches. Oh, okay. Are you aware that the governing body has said under oath that they don't teach this? They say that, but he was defending himself against, Satan's system. Okay. All right. Okay. So do we listen to the governing? But Matt, you got to understand, you can sometimes listen to the governing body and not. So history shows that institutions of every kind can struggle with this. Governments, no way. Corporations, Enron. Universities, police systems, the crooked cops, okay, versus the good cops. Religious organizations, the Pope that's smoking cigarettes and he's got his harem. I don't know, something like that, right? Or the monk, the holy monk, is involved in trafficking. He's involved in all kinds of nefarious things that you wouldn't associate normally with somebody of a holy order or a sacred order. Even activist groups, hey, we're against the injustice. Guess what? We're involved in it. Hey, we're fighting for the truth. Guess what? We're lying. So look, even in the I want to say holy circle, open circle, should be holy circle, should be a sacred circle, should be working towards making it the best that we can. But okay, let me not make any wild claims here. It's just a slip. The open circle here. No human institution or circle is automatically immune from self-protection dynamics. Okay? So that is why accountability matters universally. So Irving Goffman, Erving sociologist. The sociologist Irving Goffman. So he wrote extensively about stigma and social identity. Now he explained that communities can mark certain individuals as socially contaminated. Ever heard of marking in the JW system? This is what we're talking about. But it goes beyond just JW system. That's why I go, this is useful. Matt, you talk about JW the whole time. It's my experience, but it's the microcosm of society. I go, this is the useful thing, because once you come out of that system, you can see it in other systems. So when a person's marked, persons may avoid the individual, not because they examine evidence independently, but because they were the association itself becomes risky. They've heard it through an official channel, through a talk. Hey, this is marking this individual. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? No, but we're going to mark this person. So look, it creates a dangerous loop because people stop asking, well, what evidence exists? We're hearing one story here. Yeah, but it's the trusted channel. It's endorsed by God. It's endorsed by Christ. It's endorsed by the Holy Spirit. See? So people stop asking. They go, well, I have faith that, God has his angels, his seraphim that are getting involved in this. That wouldn't happen. Wouldn't happen. And so they start saying, oh, I wonder if it's safe for me to even look. I wonder. Oh, I know. We've just had a talk on that. Don't even look. Don't be curious. So this distinction is enormous. Because truth-seeking requires the freedom to examine claims without fear of social destruction. Right. So now we've got to be balanced. So I talk about coming into the channel. There's a working thesis. Bring in your antithesis for synthesis and a healthy skepticism. So what is that all about? It's about being balanced. It's a reminder. So not every disciplinary action is abusive. Remember the smoker? As a JW, you're not allowed to smoke. You've been smoking cigarettes. Yes. Was it a one-off? No. Okay. It's a pattern. Yes. Okay. So we're going to have to put you on restrictions. Yes, I repent. Can you help me through this? Yes. We're not removing you from the congregation. We're going to put you on restrictions. Okay. I'm going to take the actions. I'm going to take the prescription to come off this habit. I'm going to knock it. And I'm going to knock it with your pastoral help. Great. 6 months, year, whatever it takes. Person comes off, restrictions are lifted. That's your ideal system. That's how it's painted. Okay? Somebody who's stuck on it, nah, I don't care. I'm not repentant, don't care, I'm going to carry on doing this. Well, then in an ideal tribunal situation, that person is marked as not playing ball with the rules. So in that case, removal of that individual would not be seen as abusive in that system. Because not every action, okay, is just, some ethical cause, right? Now, let's say, for instance, that person who was either caught for smoking or has a real problem with smoking and knows that wasn't allowed in the system. Say, for instance, now he starts getting critical with those leaders. Says, I was removed because of, and starts lying. Not every accusation against leadership is automatically true. Not every expelled or removed individual is a victim. Balance matters. Fairness matters. Evidence matters. Now, I say evidence matters carefully because I realize you can have this evidence. If you've been labeled a bad person, there's no amount of evidence that will be looked at because you're apostate. It's this catch situation. So then the courts say there's no evidence. You haven't had the opportunity to submit it. You've got it. You've even presented it. People say, I don't want to see it. Evidence matters, but consistency also matters. So if you've got persons, I'd say Matt Gray, the elder, who for 20, 30, whatever years has been building consistency, and then he's just suddenly eliminated. you've got to look at the consistency pattern. Oh, when did things go wrong? They went wrong when somebody allegedly broke the law in the congregation. Is that on the record, Matt? Yes. Matt, do you have evidence of this? Yes. Has the court recognized this? No. Have the police recognized it? No. Have your elders recognized it? Yes and no. The ones who had told congregants to do this, they're the ones fighting against the evidence coming forward. This is the fracture in the system. Ones who recognize there is evidence, ones who feel they have got liability, who are going to their lawyers, how do we keep out of trouble? And the lawyers are saying, shut up. We'll deal with it. You've hired us to do that. Shut up. So if rules apply only downward towards your ordinary members, towards your ordinary associates, but not upward toward leadership, trust begins to fracture. Norway Supreme Court. You made a rule in that instance, but it had knock-on effects. That's why, some sense, a serious mistake has been made. So the trust begins to fracture. How much time have you bought Norway? And let's not just pick on Norway. It is an example of what happens in other systems. Because a healthy moral system cannot survive indefinitely on selective accountability. Count of Monte Cristo. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T. Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T, has discussed how moral communities naturally form around shared values. Oh, what's the commonality? Where do you come from? What do you do? Are you like me? Do we have more in common than differences? See, that's normal human behavior, right? Some might find that really annoying, but that's normal human behavior. Haidt, H-A-I-D-T, also warns that groups can become vulnerable to what he calls moral tribalism, where protecting group identity becomes more important than examining uncomfortable facts. Let's gather the congregants. Did you see corporal punishment at the Kingdom Hall? I don't want to answer this. Okay, let's make a note. Doesn't want to answer. It's very telling. Because where protecting group identity becomes more important than examining uncomfortable facts, you got this problem. This is not unique to a particular religion. We see it in politics, we see it in corporations, and this is why a place like Norway and other places do this. We see it online. We see it in social movements too. We even see it in survivor communities, sometimes even the open circle. We want to say that our open circle is doing very well, but we also don't want to turn a blind eye to the fact that you could have the same kind of problem coming in. I'm not predicting that the open circle is just going to be a disaster. I'm not predicting. I'm just saying this is human nature. It's human nature. We see it in social movements which have the best of intentions. Okay. Now, humans everywhere struggle with the tension between loyalty and with truth. So let's consider another illustration. Let's think of the school bully. Imagine a school where students are taught, well, report bullying immediately. Wow, that sounds healthy. That sounds great. But suppose students then observe that whenever bullying involves a popular teacher or administrator, the reporting student becomes isolated instead. And very quickly, the culture changes. Students no longer think, oh, well, reporting protects people. They begin thinking, oh, reporting destroys people. And at that moment, silence becomes adaptive. And institutional blindness begins to grow automatically. So that is one big reason many courts struggle with these cases. Courts represent people. They represent us. They represent Millais Gray. Right? So police reports, multiple witnesses, documented complaints. What's happening here? Oh, I've got a call. Let me just blank that off. Sorry about that. So that's one reason why many courts struggle with these cases. Many courts struggle with these cases. So courts often look for clear thresholds of evidence. We saw that. We saw that recently. So your police reports, your multiple witnesses, your documented complaints. But critics argue that coercive social systems may suppress those very mechanisms. So if people believe speaking up means losing family, losing marriage prospects, losing community, losing spiritual identity, losing lifelong relationships, then many remain silent. Not necessarily because allegations are false, but because the social cost feels unbearable. So the legal scholar and psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk, I've mentioned him before, Bessel Van Der Kolk, they've extensively explored trauma and how fear reshapes human behavior. So trauma doesn't always appear as dramatic collapse. Sometimes it appears as paralysis. Person goes, well, what do I do? Tried this route. Wrong. Tried this route. Wrong. Tried this route. Wrong. So I'm paralyzed. Sometimes it comes out as avoidance, silence, withdrawal, learned helplessness. I've been talking about that. And people adapt to survive systems around them. And often that adaptation is invisible from the outside. So Matt, come on, we need solutions. Okay. How about this? Because I say, oh, I don't have all the solutions. But I'm going to propose. Scrap hatred. Yes, you can hate what's wrong, but scrap it. Because that's not cool. It's not really going to earn the right kind of points or the right kind of respectability. How about revenge? No, it's not going to work either. Evil begets evil. Ever heard that one? So revenge, no, that's not going to work. Oh, I know. Mob outrage. Let's get persons who've been harmed and just storm a congregation. No. Mob outrage, no. That's not cool either. Okay, what about we take the libel and the slander that was given to us or sent to us, and we start using that against congregants? No. No. If you've got a sincere believer, don't do this. If you've got a leader, that's a problem. That's a different matter. Okay, but then even there, you've got to be careful how you do it. There's got to be a proper way to do this. So the solution is principled accountability. The same standards applied consistently. So we're talking about honesty. Well, if honesty matters, evidence must be to the fact that the matter goes upward as well as downward. Same for truth. If the truth is important, the evidence must be examinable. There's the evidence. Take a look at it. There it is. You see this thing which they said wasn't evidence? Okay, let's now look at it. Wow, isn't this great that we're looking at it? There we go. There's a video. What? This existed for how long? Yes! Oh, you don't have a video? Okay, but we've got witnesses. What? You've got witnesses? Yes! How long have they been sitting on this? Yes! Do we have any fresh cases? Yes! Fresh, not just yes, recent. Oh, why didn't they talk? So if truth matters, this evidence, whether it's called no evidence, I say keep it. Because when time's right, it can be examined, regardless of status. Regardless. And if justice matters, then whistleblowers should not automatically become untouchables merely for raising uncomfortable concerns. Religious freedom is important. That's the rule. But accountability is important as well. So a mature society needs to know and act on how to preserve both. Because without religious freedom, conscience suffers. Mental health plummets. Without accountability, power calcifies. Gets rock hard. And when power becomes insulated from scrutiny, history repeatedly shows that abuse risks increase. Are we seeing that, folks? Are we experiencing abuse increasing? Not only in religion, but everywhere. The deeper issue here isn't merely organizational. It's human. It's within us. I look at myself. Because it is fundamentally human. Every community faces a choice between image or truth, reputation or accountability, loyalty or honesty. Count of Monte Cristo? It's been a popular film. It's been a popular story. Why? Because healthy systems find ways to preserve both community and transparency. That's why a story like that resonates. Unhealthy systems often preserve image first. And once image becomes sacred, people become expendable. I remember hearing this. From leadership. Oh, there isn't anybody here who is not expendable. And I went, wow. Okay. For me, it was a red flag. So for maybe the clearest distinction is this: that legitimate discipline seeks moral consistency. I talk about the cigarette, right? Where we know that's no smoking allowed here. No smoking allowed. So one aims to preserve ethical standards. The other risks suppressing scrutiny through fear of social death and all the consequences that are tied into that. And so that difference must remain visible, because if society cannot distinguish between the two, then systems capable of silencing accountability may continue operating under the appearance of moral legitimacy. Can you think of a government that's doing that? I can. I can think of several. So, thank you very much for listening to this presentation. Thank you very much for joining us today on Open Circle. Now, although this has been the point that I wanted to talk about or thought was important to talk about, I know there's other subjects that are also very, very important. And on the Open Circle, I'm going to say we have some truly delightful people that have come from all walks of life. A real different spectrum, different facets. Some persons who have been extremely abused, who have faced extremes. Some persons who haven't. Some persons who've been caught up in the extremes and then made mistakes. We've also got persons who haven't made those mistakes. They've made moral, ethical decisions. We can say that there's persons who've been caught up in the extremes. They've also made moral, ethical decisions. It's a real mixture. But we also have, besides calamity, we've got some real incredible joys. We have good sense of humor. We have seen creativity. We've even seen budding romances, budding friendships, growing friendships. And so we've been able to experience principled love, principled joy. And so this is why I say thank you. Thank you for joining the Open Circle, for making it what it is. So please keep the conversation thoughtful, evidence-based. If you've got some joys that you want to share, we want to hear from you. And we want to do that in a balanced way. We want to look out for each other. Yes, if we feel that or sense that our voice has been dominating, let's be humane. In the comments section, let's be humane towards each other as we speak. Allow those who don't necessarily speak up, allow them to have opportunity to speak up. Just be cognizant of that. Again, not all institutions are abusive. Not all leaders are corrupt, and not all criticisms are just persecution. But accountability and compassion must coexist if any community wishes to remain healthy over time. Did I say thank you for being here? Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being with me. You are the reason we are here. And thank you for thinking deeply with us today. Should we open the circle?